The stars stretched endlessly above Earth, silent witnesses to the small blue planet's struggles. Humanity had survived wars, famines, and disasters that seemed impossible to endure. But nothing had prepared them for this. A signal came from the far reaches of the galaxy, carried by a vessel that moved faster than light itself. Its passengers were not diplomats, but envoys of the greatest power the universe had ever known, the Galactic Empire. The Empire's ships were massive, silver spires that glimmered in the blackness of space. Each one was armed with weapons capable of destroying cities with a single shot. Their presence above Earth's atmosphere alone caused panic and awe. People across continents stopped what they were doing and stared at the sky. Governments scrambled. Military forces mobilized, but all knew deep in their hearts that humanity's weapons were small and fragile compared to the Empire's. On Earth, the United Nations gathered in emergency session. The world's leaders, once divided by politics, ideology, and greed, now shared one fear: extinction. The Galactic Empire demanded tribute. The emissary arrived in a shuttle, walking into the chamber with movements that were unnervingly precise. His skin shimmered with scales, his eyes a bright, calculating yellow. He did not bow. He did not speak softly. His voice was sharp, echoing through the grand hall, cutting like a blade. "People of Earth," he said, his tone without warmth. "The Galactic Empire rules beyond 1,000 worlds. You have been observed, and it is clear you are primitive yet capable of destruction. We demand tribute, gold, resources, soldiers, or your planet will be burned to ashes and your people enslaved. Obedience is not optional. Death is inevitable if you refuse." Silence followed. Leaders exchanged glances. Some trembled. Some whispered of surrender. Some simply closed their eyes and prayed. The human mind recoiled at the enormity of the threat. How could a species so young and fragile even hope to oppose such a power? But even in that silence, in the corners of the world, a different sound emerged. It was the sound of hearts pounding with anger and defiance. Mothers clutched their children. Soldiers gritted their teeth. Citizens stared at the sky, and in the depths of their eyes a fire began to burn. Not the fear of death. Not the desire to survive. Something older. Something primal. Humanity refused to kneel. News spread quickly. Across every city and village, people whispered the same question: what will we do? Debate raged. The emissary did not wait. His ships hovered, unmoving but threatening, like vultures circling above a prey too stubborn to surrender. He expected immediate submission. He expected terror to paralyze humanity. And yet, for the first time in known history, humans did not falter. Across continents, leaders, scientists, and soldiers began planning. They were divided in many ways, but they shared one truth: they would not bow. For some it was pride, for others desperation, but for all, it was survival not through submission but through defiance. In the United Nations chamber, a lone figure rose. Admiral Marcus Hale, his uniform battered and worn from Earth's previous wars, looked around at the world's leaders. His eyes were heavy with the weight of responsibility, but they burned with determination. "We are human," he said, his voice echoing through the hall. "We are not slaves. We are not cattle to be herded or gold to be taken. They come to us as conquerors, but we will not kneel. We will fight, and we will make the galaxy remember what humanity is capable of." The room fell silent, not in fear this time, but in awe. For the first time, hope replaced despair. Humanity had been threatened by a force that could crush them in an instant. Yet here they stood, not as victims, but as a species united, ready to defy a galaxy that expected their surrender. Above Earth, the alien ships waited, unaware that the spark of defiance had been lit. They did not yet know that humanity's fight was just beginning, nor that the small, fragile planet below them was about to forge monsters of steel that would terrify the greatest empire the galaxy had ever known. The human heart had awakened, and the stars were about to witness it. The world trembled, yet it did not break. After the alien emissary's warning, governments called an emergency council unlike any before. Leaders from every corner of the planet gathered in a massive hall built centuries ago for diplomacy, but never meant to host the weight of an entire species' survival. Their voices clashed. Arguments flew like fire. Some urged surrender, reasoning that resistance would only bring total annihilation. Others demanded defiance, claiming humanity had survived worse threats and could do so again. In those heated hours, hope seemed fragile. Old grudges rose to the surface. Nations that had fought wars centuries ago now debated whether to trust each other, whether to share technology, whether to stand united. Fear hung over every word like a shadow, heavy and suffocating. The emissary's threat echoed in their minds. Refusal meant death. His voice, cold and piercing, had haunted dreams around the globe. Yet amid the tension, one figure rose. Admiral Marcus Hale, battle-scarred and resolute, stood before the council. His eyes scanned the room, full of people who had lived in peace and war alike, yet now faced extinction. He did not shout. He did not plead. He spoke simply, and every word struck like a hammer on steel. "We are human," he said. "For centuries we have faced storms, famines, disease, and wars that nearly destroyed us. And still we survive. We survive not because others show mercy, but because we fight. We do not kneel. We do not beg. We do not surrender. They demand tribute, they demand slaves, but they will not have them. If they come, we will be ready. We will show the galaxy what it means to face humanity." Murmurs spread through the hall. Some leaders nodded, eyes wet with pride or fear, unsure which. Others remained skeptical. Hale continued, his voice growing firmer. "They see a young, small species and think us weak. They believe our weapons and ships are nothing. But they are wrong. They will see our courage, our strength, and our will. Every ounce of effort, every spark of ingenuity will become a weapon. We have survived against impossible odds before. We will survive again." A silence fell. The words hung in the air like a promise. For the first time, the council sensed the truth. Humanity's power was not measured in the size of their fleets or the wealth of their resources. It was measured in spirit, in unity, in the refusal to bow. The emissary outside the council waited, confident of compliance. He could not know that Earth's leaders were beginning to think in ways no alien intelligence could predict. Plans began forming quietly, almost in whispers, in labs and shipyards, in cities and deserts across the planet. Engineers sketched designs. Scientists calculated engines. Soldiers trained tirelessly. Civilians joined to lend hands wherever they could. In the face of a galaxy's greatest threat, humanity's old divisions melted, replaced by a single burning goal: survival without surrender. Finally, the council voted. The decision was unanimous. Humanity would not give tribute. Humanity would not kneel, and the emissary, the symbol of 1,000 worlds of oppression, would soon learn that humans were far more dangerous than any of his kind had imagined. When the vote was announced, a wave of emotion swept through the hall. Some wept, unable to believe that, after centuries of fear and weakness, humanity had found its courage. Others shouted, a joyous roar that echoed across the chambers, announcing to the world that Earth would not bow. Admiral Hale looked out a window toward the sky. The alien ships hovered above, massive, menacing, silent. But for the first time, he did not feel fear. He felt determination, and he knew that determination would carry humanity through whatever came next. Above the planet, lights from alien vessels flickered, unaware of the storm that was brewing. Humanity was awakening. Their unity was growing stronger every hour. Their defiance was ready to turn into action. And soon the galaxy would see that humans, fragile as they seemed, had hearts of iron and courage to match the stars themselves. The council adjourned. Plans began in earnest. Earth was no longer just a planet. It was a forge, preparing to build monsters that could challenge an empire. And in every human heart, hope and pride burned brighter than ever before. Humanity had made its choice. The galaxy had made its mistake. Earth had never known such urgency. Across continents, cities that once slept in quiet routine now roared with life and purpose. Factories that had built cars, planes, and satellites transformed into colossal shipyards. Deserts, forests, and mountains became secret workshops hidden from the eyes of the world, but filled with a single shared goal: survival. Humanity would not bow. Humanity would build monsters. The engineers worked tirelessly, their hands black with oil, their eyes red from sleepless nights. Scientists calculated engines that could survive impossible heat and cold, designing weapons that could tear through the armor of the alien ships above. Soldiers trained day and night, learning to operate machines larger and heavier than anything the galaxy had ever seen. Civilians contributed wherever they could, feeding crews, transporting supplies, forging steel, and even writing messages of hope that were etched onto the hulls of ships. The ships themselves were unlike anything the galaxy had witnessed. They were not sleek or elegant. They were not meant to float like silver phantoms or glide with alien grace. They were massive, towering constructs of steel and firepower. Cannons jutted from every side, engines roared like beasts, and armor plates were thicker than mountains. Every rivet, every weld, every design spoke of human ingenuity and stubbornness. These were monsters born not from desire but from necessity. The first ship, the Titan's Wrath, rose from a secret dock hidden beneath a vast mountain range. Its hull gleamed despite its scars from construction, a reflection of humanity's determination. Engineers and workers lined the docks, many too exhausted to cheer, yet tears filled their eyes. For some, it was the pride of creation. For others, a sorrowful understanding that the fight ahead would demand sacrifice. Still, the moment was monumental. Earth's defiance now had shape and form. Children watching from afar clutched toys and models, pretending to command the massive vessels. Old veterans who had survived decades of war bowed their heads in silent respect. Humanity had built something that even the proudest alien fleets might fear. A fleet born of courage, hope, and unyielding spirit. Across oceans, other shipyards unveiled their creations. The Iron Fist, the Steel Tempest, the Judgment Hammer. Each one was unique, reflecting the minds and hands of the people who had built it. They were not perfect. Some were rough around the edges. Some engines groaned under their weight. Some weapons needed constant repair. But that imperfection was their strength. They were human. They carried human determination, human creativity, and the unbreakable will to fight for freedom. As the days passed, Earth transformed. Roads once filled with traffic were now lined with steel transports, moving supplies to hidden docks. Cities buzzed with technicians and engineers, all working in perfect chaotic harmony. Nations that had once been rivals now shared knowledge and resources freely. Borders became irrelevant. Fear became fuel. Every person contributed in some way, and every effort built toward one inevitable truth: humanity would not surrender. Admiral Marcus Hale walked among the docks one evening, his eyes scanning the monstrous ships as workers climbed ladders, welded armor plates, and tested engines. "They think fear will break us," he murmured to himself, watching the engines ignite for the first time. Smoke and fire spilled into the sky, but the ships held firm, groaning like living beasts. "They have no idea what we are capable of." Above Earth, alien ships still lingered, their emissaries observing silently, confident that humanity could never reach them. They did not understand the human spirit. They could measure technology, count resources, and predict strategy, but they could not measure courage. They could not see the fire burning in every human heart, the unyielding pride, the determination to fight not because they had to, but because they would never kneel. And so, Earth prepared. The monsters of steel stood ready in hidden docks, their hulls gleaming in the first sunlight, their cannons silent but ready to roar. Humanity waited for the moment when the Empire would descend, and when that moment came, they would show the galaxy what it truly meant to defy an empire. Humanity had no illusions. The fight would be brutal. Sacrifices would be made, ships would fall, and heroes would die. But for the first time in known history, Earth had become more than a planet. It had become a symbol, a forge of monsters, a warning that humanity, small and fragile as it seemed, had a heart of steel and fire that no empire could ever crush. And in that quiet before the storm, every human knew one thing with certainty: the galaxy would remember Earth forever. The sky above Earth darkened as the Galactic Empire's fleet returned. Hundreds of colossal ships, sleek and shining, filled the orbit, each bristling with weapons designed to vaporize entire continents. Their presence cast a shadow over the planet, one so vast that cities seemed to shrink beneath it. Humanity watched with fear, yes, but also with a growing fire in their hearts. They had prepared for this moment, and they would not falter. In the command halls of the Empire, the alien generals laughed. "Look at them," one hissed, its voice like grinding metal. "They have no fleets to match ours. No shields, no experience. Just iron and pride. They are ants ready to be crushed." The emissary who had first come to Earth smiled cruelly. He believed that defiance was foolish and that humanity would soon bow as all species did before the Empire. But he did not know humanity. He did not know that humans had forged monsters from steel. Machines built not only to fight but to embody the indomitable human spirit. And now those monsters waited in secret docks, engines humming, weapons primed, crews ready. Admiral Marcus Hale stood on the bridge of Titan's Wrath, the largest of the steel monsters. He gazed at the alien fleet above and saw not perfection but arrogance. "They think we are weak," he muttered. "They think we will kneel. Let them come. Let them see what humans are made of." Around him, the crew tightened their grips on controls, hearts racing but spirits unbroken. They were ready to face the galaxy's greatest power, and they would do so with fire in their veins. Then came the first move. Alien ships opened fire, beams of energy slicing through the atmosphere. Cities below shook as the skies filled with brilliant explosions. Humans responded immediately. Titan's wrath roared, firing its first salvo of kinetic shells. The air shook. Missiles streaked toward alien ships, leaving trails of fire that tore through enemy armor. The battle had begun. The Empire's ships, used to instant surrender, were met with unexpected ferocity. The Iron Fist charged through a line of cruisers, ramming one into fragments. The Steel Tempest unleashed a storm of missiles, turning swaths of the enemy fleet into burning debris. Where the Empire expected fear, they found defiance. Where they expected submission, they found unyielding strength. Above the battle, Admiral Hale observed the alien flagship, a massive dreadnought at the center of the fleet. It radiated power, a symbol of domination across the stars, but even it could not predict the human strategy. Every movement of the steel monsters was calculated, precise yet wild in its unpredictability. Humans did not fight like machines. They fought like a species that refused to be conquered. On Earth, billions watched the battle through screens and telescopes. Families held each other tightly, tears streaming down faces. Every strike fired, every explosion endured, every ship that held its ground was a message. Humanity would not kneel. People whispered prayers not to gods but to hope itself and to the courage of the human soul. Hours passed. The Empire's fleet, confident at first, began to realize that these humans were not like any other species they had conquered. Their ships did not falter. Their crews did not panic. Even when one of the steel monsters took a direct hit, the hull groaned but held, and the crew returned fire with vengeance. The first shockwave of the battle echoed across the void. Alien commanders were forced to adjust. Their arrogance faltered. They had underestimated humanity, the small species from a blue planet that refused chains, that built monsters of steel not just to survive but to fight, to win, and to send a message across the galaxy. Admiral Hale tightened his grip on the console. His eyes glinted with determination. "This is only the beginning," he said. "Let them feel what it means to face humanity." And as the battle raged across Earth's skies, one truth became clear. The Empire had come expecting tribute, but it had encountered something far more dangerous. Humans who would fight for freedom, no matter the cost. The battle above Earth raged like a storm no one had ever seen. Alien warships fired relentlessly, their energy beams cutting through clouds, scorching oceans, and tearing through mountains. Cities below shook, yet humanity's steel monsters held their ground. Smoke and fire streaked the skies as human cannons roared back in defiance. The Titan's wrath led the charge, its massive hull trembling under the weight of recoil from its own weapons. But it did not falter. On board, Admiral Marcus Hale's voice rang clear across the fleet. "Hold formation. Fire when ready. Remember why we fight." Every word carried a weight that resonated not just with the soldiers but with every human, watching the battle unfold. This was no longer just a fight for survival. It was a fight for the soul of humanity. The Empire's forces, confident at first, began to feel a crack in their armor. Their cruisers, used to facing obedient species, were now being torn apart by ships they considered primitive. The Iron Fist rammed into a towering alien battleship, splitting it down the middle. Explosions erupted, sending fiery debris hurtling into space. The humans cheered even as they mourned their fallen comrades. Every victory was a step forward, but it came with a heavy price. In another sector, the Steel Tempest unleashed a volley of missiles that cut a swath through enemy formations. Alien ships that had expected fear instead faced coordinated human tactics that were unpredictable, yet devastating. Engineers and pilots, once strangers from different nations, now worked together as if they were a single organism, synchronized in purpose and determination. Humanity had turned chaos into strength, yet the cost was visible in every shattered ship and every silent crew member. Judgment Hammer, a vessel that had fought valiantly since the beginning, caught a direct hit from a plasma cannon. The hull cracked, alarms blaring. Smoke filled the corridors. The crew fought desperately to contain the damage, but many lives were lost. Back on Earth, families wept, holding screens that showed their loved ones in mortal danger. Still, no ship surrendered. No human cried for mercy. Admiral Hale watched it all, feeling the weight of every life lost. He gritted his teeth, knowing that every victory came with sacrifice. But even in the darkest moments, he saw the spark that made humanity different from any other species in the galaxy. Resilience. Every fallen ship inspired others to fight harder. Every scarred hull told a story of defiance. The turning point came when a fleet of alien destroyers attempted a surprise flank, aiming to cut the humans off from Earth. Hale anticipated the move. With precise timing, he ordered the Titan's Wrath and the Iron Fist to intercept. The two ships charged like beasts, ramming and firing in a coordinated strike that destroyed the lead destroyer instantly. The following vessels hesitated, confused by the audacity and ferocity of the human attack. For the first time, the Empire's admirals realized that they were facing more than technology. They were facing spirit, unpredictability, and a kind of courage that no calculation could defeat. They had assumed fear would guide humanity's actions, but it was courage that drove them. Every human ship that survived added momentum to the battle, turning what seemed like desperation into an unstoppable wave. On Earth, people stared in awe. Across continents, eyes were glued to screens, hearts pounding, voices hoarse from cheering. Humanity had taken its first major step in rewriting the galaxy's perception of them. They were not prey. They were predators in their own right, steel monsters forged from will and fire, and they would not stop until the threat above their world was crushed. Admiral Hale's eyes burned with determination. "This is our moment," he said quietly. "We will make them remember who humanity is. We fight not just to survive, but to be free, and today they will see it." As the smoke cleared slightly above Earth's orbit, one undeniable truth emerged. The Empire had underestimated humanity, and the price of that mistake would soon become catastrophic. The alien fleet had begun to falter, but it was far from defeated. In desperation, the Empire's flagship, a colossal dreadnought known as Oblivion's Heart, moved forward, its massive hull glowing with destructive energy. It was designed to crush entire planets, and now it aimed to crush humanity's defiance. Energy beams lanced from its weapons, tearing through space and sending shockwaves that shook the human fleet. On board the Titan's Wrath, Admiral Marcus Hale stared at the approaching dreadnought. Every instinct screamed caution, yet he did not flinch. "This is the moment," he said. His crew, battle-weary but unbroken, tightened their grips. Smoke, sparks, and heat filled the corridors, but no one wavered. Humanity had endured worse, and they had survived. They would survive this. The dreadnought fired again, obliterating one of the smaller human vessels instantly. Alarms screamed, lights flickered, and panic threatened to rise. Families back on Earth held their breath, praying silently for the safety of loved ones in the heart of battle. Every loss was felt across the world, yet the human fleet did not break. Admiral Hale raised his voice above the chaos. "Steel does not break. Humanity does not bow. Forward." The words carried across the comms, reaching every ship, every crew member. Hearts that had been heavy with fear now burned with renewed determination. The Titan's Wrath, damaged but unyielding, led the charge. Its engines roared, firing thrusters that ignited the void. The Iron Fist and Steel Tempest followed, ramming, firing, weaving through debris as though the universe itself bent to humanity's will. They struck not with the elegance of alien fleets, but with raw, unstoppable force. Every impact shook the dreadnought. Every volley of missiles tore at its hull. For hours, the two forces clashed in a brutal dance. Energy beams collided with steel plating. Explosions lit the darkness like artificial suns. Humanity's fleet was smaller, scarred, and battered. Yet each ship carried the weight of determination that no number of alien vessels could match. Crew members shouted, coordinated, and sacrificed themselves without hesitation. They were fighting not just for survival, but for pride, for Earth, for every human who had ever dared to dream. The final moment came when the Titan's Wrath closed the distance to Oblivion's Heart. Its massive hull creaked and groaned. Weapons fired until barrels melted. Engines screamed against the strain, but it would not stop. With a thunderous roar, it rammed the dreadnought. Steel collided with alien armor in a cataclysmic explosion that lit the void in fire and debris. The impact tore through the heart of the Empire's pride, causing chain reactions that erupted across the flagship. On Earth, people watched in stunned silence as the alien dreadnought finally faltered. Cheers erupted, tears flowed, and every human felt the weight of victory and the cost it demanded. Humanity had struck a blow no one thought possible. The Empire, so confident in its superiority, had been humbled by a species they had underestimated. Amid the chaos, Admiral Hale stood on the bridge of the Titan's Wrath, wounded, exhausted but victorious. His eyes, reflecting fires of battle and hope alike, scanned the fleeing alien fleet. "This is only the beginning," he said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of both sorrow and triumph. "They will never forget humanity." The human fleet, though battered and scarred, remained unbroken. Each ship was a monument to courage, each crew member a symbol of resilience. Humanity had faced annihilation and refused to bow. They had turned fear into strength, chaos into strategy, and survival into legend. As the last of the Empire's ships retreated into the darkness, Earth itself seemed to exhale. Cities, oceans, and deserts were scarred, but humanity had endured. The stars, once a place of distant threats, now held a new respect for a small blue planet and the species that called it home. Humanity had sent monsters of steel to meet the Empire, and they had proven that courage, unity, and willpower were stronger than any weapon. The galaxy had learned a lesson it would never forget. Humans did not kneel. Humans did not give tribute. Humans fought, and when they fought, the universe itself trembled. The void above Earth was silent now, a vast emptiness where once fire and steel had clashed. Alien ships had fled, shattered and broken, retreating into the far reaches of the galaxy. Humanity's fleet, battered and scarred, floated among the debris of the greatest battle the stars had ever known. Smoke drifted from damaged ships, alarms still blaring in the quiet aftermath, but the human armada remained unbowed. Every surviving vessel was a testament to courage, and every crew member carried the weight of victory in their hearts. On the bridge of the Titan's Wrath, Admiral Marcus Hale looked out at the remnants of the battlefield. The scars of battle were everywhere, craters in orbit, fragments of alien technology drifting like fallen stars. But what he saw beyond the destruction was something even greater: hope. Humanity had faced an empire that spanned 1,000 worlds and demanded tribute, yet Earth had sent monsters of steel that refused to yield. They had fought with fire, with courage, and with the unbreakable will of a species that could not be tamed. Across the planet, billions watched and listened. Screens broadcast images from space, showing shattered alien ships and human vessels still floating proudly. Families embraced, tears streaking faces, voices raw from shouting and cheering. People wept, not just for those lost in battle, but for the triumph of spirit, for the proof that humanity could defy the impossible. The air was electric with celebration, yet tinged with solemn remembrance for the brave souls who would never return home. Hale's eyes met those of his officers, and in that moment, no words were needed. Every gesture, every nod spoke of shared grief and shared triumph. They had faced annihilation and emerged alive. They had struck fear into an empire that had thought them insignificant. They had rewritten the rules of the galaxy. The Empire's retreating ships left a trail of smoke and sparks, reminders that even the mightiest powers could be humbled by courage and unity. Word of the battle spread quickly across the stars. Systems that had lived under the Empire's shadow for centuries began to whisper, to question, to hope. Humanity was no longer just a young species on a small blue planet. Humanity had become a legend, a force that could not be ignored. Even as celebrations erupted, Earth began the work of healing. Damaged cities were rebuilt, ships repaired, and families reunited. Every corner of the planet shared in the triumph, for it was a victory that belonged to all of humanity. Scientists continued refining the designs of the steel monsters, preparing for the day the Empire, or any other threat, might return. Humanity knew that victory today did not guarantee safety tomorrow. Yet this battle had proven something far more important. They would never kneel. The survivors of the fleet looked out into the galaxy, eyes reflecting the light of distant stars and the fires of their victory. They had fought, bled, and endured. They had faced an enemy greater than any they had ever imagined and had shown that the human spirit, though fragile in body, was indestructible in will. Tales of their courage would spread from system to system, inspiring hope and caution in equal measure. Admiral Hale, weary but resolute, whispered to himself as he watched the stars. "We are human. We do not give tribute. We do not bow. We fight, and when we fight, the universe remembers us." His words carried across the fleet, and though the battle was over, the echo of defiance would resonate for generations, and so Earth endured. Humanity had sent its monsters of steel against the galaxy's mightiest empire, and they had survived. They had,